You are listening to the Christian Coaching School podcast with Dr. Leelo Bush, Episode 4.
Welcome to the Christian Coaching School podcast, your one-stop resource for continuing education as well as personal and professional growth. And now, here's your host, the author and creator of Spirit-Led Christian Life Coaching, Dr. Leelo Bush.
Welcome back. I hope you're doing well and you're feeling enthusiastic about getting your message out to the world. Before we dive in, I want to welcome you from wherever you are listening around the world. I also want to send a special shout out to Melbourne, Australia and Vienna, Austria. I am excited you have joined me. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and other major podcast streaming directories. Here's today's trivia question. The distinguished president of this academy, Reverend Evan Bush, is a U.S. military veteran with 3 honorable discharges. To honor and thank all who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces, what does PCCCA Academy offer to all enrolling students who are current members of the U.S. military, veterans, and their spouses? I will have the answer for you later on during this podcast, so stay with me. Today, we are talking about how to get prepared for public speaking. This is a really important topic for life coaches because we want to make the most of our speaking opportunities, and there are coaches whose primary method of delivering coaching is to do so before an audience. I am one of those rare people who actually enjoy public speaking. It wasn't always that way, but now I look forward to sharing my message with lots of people. I don't think I'm necessarily a great speaker, but when I get in front of a group, my talk just seems to flow out of me. Some people refer to this as anointing, but I definitely think it's God because without a sense of purpose to my talk, it's just so much noise, and frankly, it even bores me. So that said, I think knowing your purpose deeply is a key ingredient to being comfortable in front of an audience. Make sure that purpose compels you to share, that some part of God's plan will be left incomplete if you don't get your message out. Whether you write or speak, God has given you a unique voice, meaning a special way of conveying your message that will resonate with certain people. It's your job to fine-tune your presentation skills to engage powerfully with as many in your audience as possible. And preparation is key. It's everything. And today we are going to talk about what you can do to make sure that your public speaking engagement is stellar. I want you to get invited to more and more venues to share your message. And today I will tell you what needs to happen before you ever step on a stage to make sure that you are ready. First, let's talk about your attitude and your skills. As with most things in life, excellent presentations begin with your mindset. Whether you're a nervous wreck because you have to give your first speech at school, or maybe you're an entrepreneur who's interested in increasing the sales of your products and services, your attitude toward giving the presentation will be key to your success or failure. Your attitude toward the event should be that this is your chance to shine, to spread your word, to inform and influence people. Whether you're actually selling a product or not, you are there to make an impact on your audience and to sell something. Whether you're a teacher, a preacher, an entertainer, or a businessman, you are a salesperson. Whether you are selling a concept, a belief, a product or service, or an idea, your responsibility is to convince the audience that your points have validity and value. If you haven't sold your audience on that by the end of your talk, you really haven't done your job, the one that you were there to do. Does that begin to change your attitude about what exactly you're doing in front of those people? I hope so, because that's the attitude you will need to carry out the steps that we are going to be talking about here. So, how are your skills? Presentations have many facets. Your mindset, preparation, content, audience interaction, and follow-up. Here are some questions to help you assess how competent you are right now in those areas. Number 1, when you learn that you have a presentation to give, do you look at it fearfully, happily, or as a business opportunity? Number 2, as you prepare your presentation, are you most concerned with the easiest way to put it together, or your message, or your audience's reaction? Number 3, do you know the purpose of your presentation? 4, do you have a plan for researching your presentation? Number 5, how will you determine the length of your presentation? And 6, how many key points will you be making, and do you know what they are? 7, could you deliver the presentation without props, meaning in this case, without notes, PowerPoint handouts, and so forth? That's a good question. Number 8, how will you rehearse? 9, how will you structure your presentation? And 10, how will you tailor your presentation for this audience? Generally, your answers should indicate that you care most of all about the outcome of your presentation. The best presentation involves good content, being well delivered by you with the audience having an excellent understanding of the points at the end, right? But before we address all these topics, we need to talk about the benefits of being a presenter. Even though the first reaction of many of those asked to give a presentation is, "What do I have to do to get out of this?" There are many benefits, both personal and professional, to be gained from being a presenter. Smart leaders see public speaking as challenging and rewarding professionally and personally. So let's talk about a few of the benefits. First, financial. If you are fundraising or appealing to investors, or if you're selling something. Then there's converting or influencing people. No matter what your field, whether it's spiritual, technical, political, self-improvement, or some other area, your goal should be to get to the hearts and minds of other people, to understand and hopefully get them to agree with your point of view. Then there's recognition. Whether it's a corporate or personal event, public speaking is your chance to stand out and gain respect. And then there's satisfaction and fulfillment. Giving a good presentation should leave you with a feeling of gratitude for having had the opportunity to help others. It should leave you with pride in yourself and your abilities, as well as a feeling of accomplishment. And your goal is to hopefully do all of those things at one point or another. If you look at public speaking as something to be dreaded and gotten through as best you can, then you are really making the least of an opportunity instead of the most. And God wants us to make the most of all of the doors that He opens for us. Don't you agree? There are so many benefits that you can derive from public speaking if you have the right mindset. And your message is important right now for those who are in your audience. It's your job to deliver it as well as possible, and God's job to bring the response or the results. So remember whose job is what, and that will relieve a lot of pressure. You can now focus on the audience and what they need to hear from you. You should also look at this as a chance to expand your abilities and your sphere of influence. To help you do this, write down the goals you hope to achieve through the presentation, the people you want to influence, and the message that you want to leave them with. Now, be very specific. And if you don't know the answers, do some research to find out. The better you understand the goals of giving this presentation, the better a job you will do. Once you change your mindset from that of avoidance of giving a presentation to the goal of giving a great presentation for specific reasons, you transformed into someone who is motivated by purpose. That's what I was talking about earlier. Giving the presentation now becomes a completely different experience. You might think that giving a presentation is all about the content, but looking at it that way will almost assure you of giving a lackluster presentation most of the time. Of course, content is one of the 3 main ingredients. In great presentations, though, there are 2 other ingredients, and they are you as a presenter and the audience, who are just as important. When it comes to preparation, content might be the least of the 3 since you already have a good understanding of the content that you will share. In order to understand exactly what your role is in the eyes of the audience, you need to ask yourself a series of questions. Who are you to the audience? Are you the expert or a comic? What does the audience expect from you? And who is the audience? How many people will there be? What is their position in the company or organization? What are their values? What is their level of knowledge? How interested will they be in what you have to say? And why do you think they're here? If you don't know the answers to these questions, do your best to find out. You could perhaps send a short email or make a phone call to the people who invited or hired you. They should be able to give you the answers to those questions. Another thing you could do is take a look at the organization or company's website. You will gain all kinds of information like the company's mission statement or profiles of their key staff. There will probably be press releases, goal statements, and other information about the company. All of this information gives you insight about how the company sees itself. So, why is this important? Well, in lots of less than great presentations, you've probably been to some of them, the audience and the presenter are in a room together because someone told them to be. And nobody seems to have a very clear idea of why they're there. But if you're an expert, you've probably delivered the presentation before and you do know why you're presenting. But even so, try to keep it fresh by asking what's new about it this time. In order to give a really good presentation, there are a few questions that you should ask. Am I here to change their perception? Am I creating a call to action? What do I hope to inspire the audience to do? Am I providing an information update? Am I offering entertainment or education, or a combination, which is now referred to as edutainment? Am I here to challenge someone else's point of view? Or am I here to justify my position or my company's position? If you don't have a set role as presenter, then you are free to do your best as you see it. You do need to get the answers to these questions clear in your mind, though. No matter what your role is, the audience will only pay attention to you as long as they get a sense that you know where you are going. Now that you know something about the who, what, and why, you can begin to prepare your presentation with these things in mind. But remember that your presentation is a sales instrument. And here's something you might not know. Even the sharpest audience only remembers a total of 4 or 5 of the points that you present at the very most. So now you can tailor those 4 or 5 points based on who, what, or why you have just discovered. And one more thing, you want to make sure that your audience knows why the topic is important before you even present the facts. This technique will make your points far more memorable. I'm sure you've heard about the win-win theory that says that the best outcomes occur when both sides win. That statement is most definitely true when it comes to giving your presentation. For you to get what you want as a presenter, the audience must get what it wants. And to give them what they want, try to imagine what they are most anxious to achieve, change, or resolve. Then look at your presentation and see which points are going to answer those desires. A good technique starts with you asking your audience what matters to them. And even before you ask, you should already know this from your research. Then explain what you are going to talk about and how it relates to them and to the need or fear or desire that you have discovered. Explain your point and relate it directly to the needs of your audience. Let them know what you will share and how it will take them closer to achieving their goals. Let's talk a little bit about research. Your research can make the difference between an average speech and a great speech. If you take the trouble to make sure that your dates and numbers are accurate, you will impress the audience. If there's a newer version or updated numbers, and this happens at the speed of light these days, you should take the time to find out what is current and present at that time and share it with your audience. Don't just know the fact or figure, but also be ready to explain the why behind it. Each point that you make in your presentation should be important for some reason. If you don't know what that reason is, if you can't give an answer to the question, so what? Then you might consider dropping that point from your presentation. Now, the internet is a phenomenal source of information. It can make your job so much easier as a presenter with all the facts at your fingertips. But at the same time, it can make your audience knowledgeable as well. So you need to be at least as current as your audience is. But how do you stay current? Well, the internet makes it super easy for you to be both interesting and current if you know where to look. You can find facts, anecdotes, humor, pictures, and even video on the internet. You can go to the company websites to research the company and their products, or the organization and their members. You can get great material based on what the company says about itself or what is being said about them on the internet. You should also make sure that your dates are current and that your information is correct. Google and YouTube make it easy to find all kinds of information. In my opinion, the web is the best place to start in preparing your presentation. So let's talk more about the content itself. Content is the main ingredient of your presentation. It should be to the point, impactful, organized, timed, and practiced. If you feel secure about your content, it goes a long way toward building your confidence. So where should you focus? Well, in my view, In presentations, less is more. Remember, audiences can only remember 4 or at the most 5 points to any presentation. So being wordy will not necessarily impress them, but it might bore them. And that's definitely not what you want. The most common problem with presentations is that the speaker tries to fit in too much information. Your speech needs to be simple and to the point, much more so than the written word. So stay on your message using straightforward, everyday language. Focus on the points you're presenting and support them. Be yourself and be natural. Now, if you decide to use some humor, it's good to remember that humor can be a little tricky. Some people just naturally have a gift for it and have great timing, and they can tell a good joke. But that's not everybody. Audiences love a little humor, and using it can fix a point in their mind, but there's a difference between a little humor and telling a joke for the sake of telling a joke. The humor should relate in some way to the presentation. If not, it's only going to serve as a distraction. If you're not adept with humor, you really don't need to use it. And by all means, don't ever tell a tasteless joke. There are much better ways to make an impression on your audience. So, do you have a plan to structure your presentation? If not, here's a basic one. The old advice about giving a presentation is to first tell them what you're going to tell them, second, tell them, and third, tell them what you just told them. Now, that's still not bad advice, but there are other skillful ways of carrying it out as well. What you want to do is make sure that your opening has impact. And there's a few ways to get your audience immediately interested in what you have to say. As I mentioned before, you can use humor to start with something funny that will set the stage for your presentation, or you can tell a story. Audiences love stories, and often they are what make a speaker memorable. Or you could start with a question that you know is in the audience's minds and that you will be answering by the end of your presentation. Finally, you could tell them some surprising statistic that relates to your presentation. Now, all of these are excellent tactics to get the audience immediately involved, because your goal is to set the scene, to challenge an assumption, to introduce an argument, to get their attention. Audiences often come with low expectations of the presenter, so if you surprise them in some way, you have a great chance to maintain their attention very well. Either giving them a statistic or asking a question that is particularly relevant to your audience is a great way to gain both immediate attention and interaction. If you follow the surprising statement with a question, that will work too. And here's an example. For instance, say you're speaking to a high school audience about diabetes. Perhaps you're a wellness coach. You tell them that the rise in type 2 diabetes is exponential among the young. You give them the current yearly percentage of adolescents with type 2 diabetes, and you ask them if they know how that is directly related to the food they are eating. You will likely get a free-flowing conversation with them until you ask them to hold off until you can give your talk, and then take questions either intermittently during your speech, or you can hold the questions until the end and expect some pretty lively participation. It depends really on the type of talk that I am giving. If it is a training session, interaction is usually good. But if it is a sales talk, I will generally hold off questions until the end so that my flow is not broken and I can really concentrate. So you'll have to try that on your own and see what works best for you. Initial impact is all about knowing the most important things to your audience and meeting them there. with the way that you present your opening remarks. If you already had a thorough introduction by a third party, you may want to minimize what you have to say about yourself in the introduction. But if it's been left to you to create the case for your expertise, you will want to tell a short story about your personal experiences that demonstrates how you gained your knowledge. Again, audiences love stories, and they will remember them. Most important to the audience is their question, "What's in it for me?" They are thinking to themselves, "Why should I listen to you?" So that's what you want to answer in the beginning. Once you've told them how you're going to make the presentation worth their time, you want to explain a little about the specifics, where you're taking them, why it's important to them, and the benefit they will get from going on this journey with you. Let them know right from the beginning in terms that they understand why this presentation will be worth their time. I hope you have found this information helpful. I want you to be equipped to give stellar presentations so that you get invited back again and again, and so that new doors get open to you to share your message and your gift. We'll talk more about creating memorable presentations in a future show. As promised, I told you I would give you the answer to our trivia question that I posed at the beginning of the podcast. And to help you recall what it was, the distinguished president of this academy, Reverend Evan Bush, is a U.S. military veteran with 3 honorable discharges. To honor and thank all those who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces, what does PCCCA Academy offer to all enrolling students who are current members of the U.S. military, veterans, and their spouses? Do you know what that is? Have you figured it out? Well, here's the answer. This academy offers a 10% military discount to all those who have honorably served the United States military, as well as their spouses who truly serve alongside them. If you come from a military household, you know the sacrifices that the entire family makes. All you need to do to receive this discount when you enroll is to upload your DD-214 with your enrollment form and then call the Academy for the coupon code before checking out. You can just call our toll-free number at 800-280-4662 and select extension 1. The discount applies to payments in full as well as payment plans. So that's it for today. I am Dr. Leelo Bush. Join me next time for another episode of the Christian Coaching School podcast. Would you like to make better decisions or help your clients do so? Right now, I have a free decision-making template for you. It will help you discover your pros and cons, as well as rate their importance to make the best decision possible. Plus, I have added some free Christian coach training too, and you can get it all at pccca.org/tools. I hope you found this episode of the Christian Coaching School podcast helpful. If so, please share this podcast with someone you care about. Spirit-led Christian life coaching truly is the most powerful coaching available to mankind, and I am incredibly blessed to share my knowledge with you. I also want to hear from you with feedback and ideas for this podcast. Just write me from the contact page at the Academy website at pccca.org. This has been the Christian Coaching School podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Leelo Bush. Now go make this your best day yet, and remember to thank the one who makes it all possible.